Hey guys, this is Chris Stadler, and I am going to talk today about turning military experience into a civilian career. Specifically, we're going to talk about the resume. So, what brought this up? Well, my little bro came back from Afghanistan, and he is looking at getting a job locally, and I'm trying to help him turn that experience that he gained into something that could be used locally, and so he can get a job and afford to stay home. For a lot of us, it's the right thing to do. You know, you show up and your kids miss you, and they're hanging all over you, and you just don't, you don't want to leave. And my little brother was most recently a contractor, and so he was able to exercise his option to stick around once he came home. And so we're going to have an awesome Christmas, but it'll be an even awesomer Christmas if John gets a job. So I shouldn't be saying his name, but he is so let's say it from the top. Previously, John did not have all right, well, let's frame it a little bit. So John is a small arms repairer. And how do you translate that to civilian life? Well, he's looking at a couple of things. There are a couple of things he can do. First of all, he is doing informational interviews with people who are in the area and who may know the market a little better than he does. Also, he needs to build that network, and so he needs to talk with people. He needs to be cool, respect their time, ask good questions, show up prepared, but not in any way be pushy or too intense. And so that's what he's doing. Part of that process is writing the resume. And so I've offered to help him write the resume. First of all, how do I know what I'm talking about? Well, so I spent about 4 years teaching advertising at the University of Oregon. And one of the things that I taught there was how to sell yourself, how to sell your agency, and how to sell your approach to things. And what I noticed a lot was there was a lot of writing that came across my computer screen that did not lend itself to good communication. And I developed a few concepts that help turn that wall of data into information. That's probably one of the first things I want to talk about. But let's actually get to an example before we talk about it, and so that it turns into real life application for you. So what does your resume look like? What are you working on? Where are you trying to get to? Let's just start with John's resume and take a look. So first of all, we wanted to have an objective section. And usually when you run across advice about an objective, it's like, well, it's to let people know what you want. Yeah, we get it, right? We know that's what the objective is. But the question is, what function does it serve on the resume? Why does a hiring manager want to know what your objective is, right? Who cares what your objective is? They have their own things, right? They want you to do what they want you to do, right? Well, yes. And that's why you need an objective section, because what you need to do is you need to go and talk to the hiring manager, and you need to see what they want. And when you find out what they want, and if it's something that you want to do, you say it right back to them in the objective section. For instance, if my little brother goes to somebody and says, hey, I want to know more about your company. I want to know more about your positions that you have available that maybe I can fill for you. Because he realizes that companies aren't doing you a favor. They're doing themselves a favor. They're trying to find someone to fill their need. They need you. The key is to find out how to tell them you're the right person. And how do you tell them you're the right person? Well, first you gather information. You chat with them. And you say, okay, tell me about what's going on here. Tell me about what are the problems you've had in the past with people. What's the biggest thing you're looking for is another way to ask that. You may find that people just, start in this job and then they take off after 2 months, at which time the company realizes it lost a bunch of money in training and getting someone ramped up to do the job only to have them leave. If that's the case, then you say something like what we said here: secure a long-term position, right? And where are you looking? Well, if you say, well, anywhere in Arizona, they're probably not going to believe you. They're probably going to say, well, maybe it's everywhere in Arizona, but if he gets an equal offer closer to where he lives, he's probably going to take it. But if you say, for a Southeast Phoenix area company, then all of a sudden now it's like, okay, yeah, he's probably down with my company since I'm in Southeast Phoenix area. Mesa, Tempe, Chandler, places like that. What else? Well, a Southeast Phoenix area company that will allow me to use my high quality standards in inspecting machine tolerances and my ability to train and lead. So where do you get this information from? Well, first of all, you say, you might even write this out in longhand and just say, what are all the things that people might want to hear about my objective? Like where I want to live, where I want to work, what kinds of things I enjoy most about a job, things like that. You might write all that out, and it might take, a couple of paragraphs. It might take, half a page or whatever when you first write it out. That's fine. But what you want to do is then cut it down to the couple most important things that hiring manager wants to hear about. And you put that at the top, and then every single time you send out a resume, first of all, don't, unless people have success in your industry, sending out resumes, just a bunch of resumes to a bunch of people, don't ever do that. Because usually in most most industries, you can't just send out a resume and then they want to talk to you. Usually someone. So especially in jobs where who you are is as important as what you know how to do. So your point of view on things like that. So anyway, in John's situation, he has a skill that is a lot more like, okay, you know how to measure tolerances, you know how to keep quality standards and things. Well then we want to talk to you. Oh, you know how to use the calipers, you know how to measure tight tolerances. I want to hear from you. And so do they, what's their main problem? Is it low quality standards? Is it sloppiness in measurements? Well, then you want to say high quality standards, right? Is it, what is it inspecting? Is it inspecting guns? Then put guns in here instead of machine tolerances. Put something about guns in there, right? Weapons, small arms. Got a company making howitzers, put it in there, right? Make it specific so that they can tie it into what they're doing. And you can't really do that without talking to people. So talk to them. Get this information by having informational interviews, and then just send them in something that makes it easy for them to say, okay, yeah, easy decision. It doesn't have to be something that blows their minds. It doesn't. It just needs to be exactly what they're looking for. Make it easy for them to hire you. They're looking for someone who can do the job. Tell them you can do the job and find out what it means to them for you to be able to do the job. And then write it up in here. All right, so and my ability to train and lead. So these are going to be important only if they mention it. So if they're like, yeah, training isn't really a thing here, take that out. Don't have it in there. It's noise. Take it out. Cut the copy. But if they're thinking, yeah, we need people who can lead in this area because we have bad quality standards, so we need someone who can help us with the quality standards and then train and lead other people. All right, and the reason I'm going into detail on these things is because I've been where you are, and I've looked at some of these, the advice that people give, and until you're on the other side, until you're hiring, until you're looking at other people's work, it's very hard to really know objective. All right, cool. They want to know what my objective is. I wonder why. To secure a job at a company that, pays me a lot of money. You just want to tell them what they want to hear about your objective. Tell them all the good stuff. Tell them what's going to make them happy. All right, moving on. All right, so what I'm doing here is, you can see this here. It's just a notation. This is a Google Doc, and what I'm doing is I'm just sending this to my brother, and then I'm just going to have him look at it. And if he wants to add that, he'll check the box here, and then all that stuff will appear in the actual document. Right now, it's just showing me what it would look like if that's in there. All right, so now let's go to summary of qualifications. So as a rule, you don't want to have more than 3 bullet points. You want to have a reason for having more than 3 bullet points. And so if you put summary of qualifications, it's perfectly fine to have a sentence right after this, just kind of like, this is my summary of qualifications, and then, you wouldn't put that, but you just say like something like, like summarize it, abstract it, and just be like, basically I'm a badass. And then here, all the 3 bullet points that show me that. Okay, let's look at these individually though. So secret clearance, that's pretty cool because that shows stability in his past. It shows that he probably doesn't have much of a criminal record, or, I don't even know, I don't even know what you need for a secret clearance, but it shows that you can be trusted with the nation's secrets, some of them. Instruction and mentorship, this kind of backs up what he said about training and leading. And that's good. The nice thing about this is it gives you something to talk about during the interview. So you might even, once you're done with this, you might even print out or just make comments in here. Just do use the comment feature in here. You can see it popped up on the right, and just say, oh, that reminds me of a time when I mentored so-and-so, right? And what you do is you remind yourself of the story. What do I mean by mentorship? When did I mentor? When was I good at instruction? What are some ways to show that? And then you tell a story about it. And I recommend, if you're going to tell a story, and you should be ready to tell a story in an interview, even on the phone interview. Be ready to tell a story. And if you can start with a problem that existed, then talk about how important the problem was and why it mattered, and then tell how you solved it with mentorship or whatever you're going to talk about, right? Could be instruction, could be management, could be conflict resolution. That's a great one. Get a story ready for the interview and just be thinking about it. Maybe even make a note here, just like a 3-point thing. It's like problem, why it was such a big deal, and then what I did to fix it, right? That's a story right there. Leadership. So, again, if you're gonna write leadership, which is good, if that's what they want, leadership. If you're gonna write leadership there, especially if they're having problems with quality standards, and I'm not saying the job does. I just made that up and put it there. But if they're having problems with quality standards and they know that you can come in and then push people and say, you know what, the quality has to get better around here, and that's what they want, then they're gonna want to see. That's going to be a plus for you. It's going to be a big plus for you. So you're going to want to be able to talk about your leadership and talk about, a time when you ran into maybe like people around you kind of being jerks, and just being like, we don't care about quality. The boss is a jerk, and we really don't. And where you led them and quality improved because you were the example. You related to them, and at the same time you said, but we got to get quality up. So to be ready to talk about a time when you led. Also be ready to talk about your leadership style. What kinds of situations are you strong in leadership, and what kinds of areas do you still need to work on? The thing about the interview process is don't be afraid to be a little bit vulnerable. Talk about, find out what they need, and don't act like you can't do what they need. But talk about some things that you still want to grow in. I think people really appreciate that, and it makes you believable. I interviewed someone who was a kind of a higher up at a big company, and she just talked a lot during the interview process, and literally had no flaws. Do you think I believe that someone has no flaws? No way. And so it came across as, well, I don't know what's wrong with her, but I'm pretty sure that I don't trust her, completely, because I just don't know. It's not that she's not trustworthy. It's just that she wasn't giving me any context for how to judge her character. And so it's okay to do that. That's right. So now let's look at the next thing, cooperative attitude. This is something I might cut out of his resume. First of all, because it makes a, 5th bullet point? But that's the obvious reason. The less obvious reason is that this is something you're going to show. A cooperative attitude is something you're going to show. It might even show in what you talk about here, and just like the wording you use. Did you order someone to do something and that solved the problem, or did you come alongside them, right? And so there are ways to say things that shows your cooperative attitude. The verbs you use in this whole document will show your cooperative attitude. Now, that said, I don't want you guys to worry about every little detail that I'm talking about. I'm pouring out a lot, and I realize it. But if you're interested, comment, and we'll figure out how to help out a little more. Let's look at experience. All right, so he was most recently a small arms quality control inspector for AC First in Kabul, and so I put down here a little note because I'm thinking, John, add a little paragraph, because you have how many bullet points here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 bullet points. So now it's time to learn how to write a little bit, you guys. So there's a saying in advertising copywriting, and it's say it straight, then say it great. And the point of that is that you want to say it straight first, because too many people try to be clever with their writing. But if you say it straight first, even if it takes you a full paragraph when you only want a sentence, take the time you need. Take the time it takes, to say it straight, and then say it great. And so that's the point here. And so you want to have like maybe 3 strong bullets, and then everything else, just put it in the paragraph at the top. You can't say everything, and so don't try. Just try to say what backs up the things that you set up here. What backs up the things you set up here? High quality standards, machine tolerances, and ability to train and lead. You see, once again, you're not trying to necessarily blow people's minds. What you're trying to do is appear solid. That's what a resume is supposed to do. Be solid. Talk about what you do, and then be convincing about it. So in experience, talk about your leadership. Talk about whatever they said was important to them. And then, so tell the truth, say it straight, then say it great, and then cut your copy, cut it back down to like a sentence or whatever, but make it strong. Try not to use a lot of adjectives or adverbs. I'm going to try to find one. Oh, there's final inspections, but that's actually helpful. Repaired weapon, that's pretty helpful. Interacts with customers. So whenever you say awesome or very or anything like that, even the word proper might be a little extraneous, a little extra, a little too much. But anytime you can cut copy in a resume, good. See what I just did there? I didn't say it's good. I said good. All right. Anyway. All right. So orders all necessary parts for repairs utilizing the U.S. Army ordering system. So unless that's something they want to see, like you're familiar with the ordering system, if it's a company that uses the Army ordering system, then that might be important. If not, take it out. I would just remove this whole last bullet point. And then the word utilizing, it's up to you. People say don't say utilize when you really mean use. But if you're trying to prove that you can, play the game, that you know how to be in business, well then maybe, if there's any doubt that you know how to be in business, then I would use maybe use the word utilize. But if you're like me, I'm trying to convince people that, hey, you know what? In my line of work, it's not so much about sounding sophisticated and businessy and using business speak. For me, it's about calming everybody down and just saying, hey, you know what? Just use it. Just use. You don't utilize, you use. And so that said, let's move on. So, and here's where we talk about the difference between data and story. So people aren't going to remember the data that you give them. They're only going to remember the story. And so here's how it works in a cognitive neuroscience example. You have a node, right? It's a little node in your brain, and the node connects to smaller bits of brain. And those smaller bits of brain contain different pieces of information, and they're connected by story. They're connected by relevance. So if you have a goal, think of a goal as a node, right? So they're a hiring manager and they have a goal. They want to hire someone to do something. Now they're going to remember, they're going to read this resume and they're going to remember only things that are important to their story. Everything else is just going to be data, literally meaningless data. And it doesn't matter how important you think it is. The question is, does it fit into their story? Is it story or is it data? And so think about this. An example would be, think of like a book you read or a movie you saw where everything that happened literally, like you're like, hey, why did that happen? What does that have to do with the story? Because you expect everything to tie into the story. Now think about people who have told you a story and what good, bad, whatever. You forgot all the things that weren't related and you only remembered the story. The opposite example, data, is when you have maybe a spreadsheet or a dictionary. It's really just a reference. You don't read the dictionary and find a story. You read the dictionary to find data. You want to find out what a word means. The only story there might be in there is if you see a word in there and there's a definition and it relates and you have a eureka moment when you realize the root word is related to another root word that means the same thing. Things like that are cool. Well, to me, because I'm a nerd. But anyway, point is, it doesn't matter unless it's story. And so if they're like, I don't really care about all the weapons systems, I assume that he probably, was able to instruct and repair all these, small arms, right? So like, 50 cal, sniper weapons, squad automatic weapon, M4, 223, all this stuff he knows, he knows how to, it would almost be better just to say, Modus, use Modus, use the military slang for M2 50 caliber machine gun and like M4 and M16, maybe use those terms because they have more story attached to them, more identity attached to them, where M2, it might for a military person, but it might not for somebody else. And so you're basically, unless they know what these are, this is all just data and it's going to be meaningless to them. So now, if you talked about the weapons and then how they, told a story that had to do with your ability to measure precision and a certain level of, what tools you used, what tolerances you were able to measure to. Things like that might be very interesting for someone looking for someone to do quality inspection. So do you see why story matters so much? And so going down here, so a bunch of this is kind of the same. You have too many bullet points here. You can, once again, try to find something to write, like a little paragraph here that kind of abstracts everything and kind of says, here's the point, right? Here's the problem I solve. And then you can have bullet points that show that you solve that problem. That's a good use for bullet points. Examples of ways you solve problems. Okay, so let's look at this. So, for instance, in this situation, it says manage 1,697 portable TMDE test measurement and diagnostic equipment items for the battalion that led the program in being commended by division inspectors, maintained a zero delinquency. Okay, so that sounds pretty good, and it seems like something that should go at the top. But once again, that depends on who's reading it. But I think that most resumes you're not going to gear every little section to the person who's reading the resume. If the job's important to you, you might. And if you started doing it, you'd get better at it and faster at it. And I don't recommend not doing it. But what I'm saying is maybe you set up the resume for most employers And then at the very top, you just have, you change the top, the objective section like we talked about before. Okay, so let's look at this, and I think this is one of the last ones here that we're going to talk about. I think there's one more below, and then we'll be done. But so for some of these things, I'm thinking like, that sounds like it might be good, but is it good? He says mentored 3 soldiers in successfully completing weapons reset for 5 task forces within the 10th Combat Aviation Brigade for 4,300 items. And that number sounds big and everything, but I don't know if that's good or bad. I just don't have the experience with this kind of work with the 10th Combat Aviation Brigade. I don't have that experience, nor does probably really anyone who's going to read this resume. And so what you might want to do is just call it an honor. Maybe put something at the front that lets them know that this was a conspicuous achievement, and it's not just something that's like, oh yeah, hey, he met standards, is it conspicuous? Did he just meet standards? Were the standards difficult to meet? Those kinds of things give it context and story. Further, if he were able to say, hey, in this whole thing, like let's just say at the top, he was able to say, here was the problem facing the Fort Drum at this time. We had this problem, and this problem. If we couldn't solve those things, then the commanders were going to get reprimanded or whatever the consequences are, right? And then you go and talk about it. You just say, first I did this, then I did this, which led to this. Then this happened, and I did this. And that's how we got to where we are today, at the end of 2012, which is compliance and excellence or whatever, right? So that's a story when you start with a problem. And so let them know what the problem is up here. Just say, we weren't meeting standards when I first got there. Tell the story. Feel free to talk about, if you made a mistake, don't be afraid to say I made a mistake and here's what I learned from it and we still got the job done. One place, all right, so here's a question, all right, so how do you know when to say you made a mistake and when not to? You want to be vulnerable, but then, so I think that it's going to be, there's no necessary rule, but at the same time, if you're like, you know what, I still met my goal. If you can say you still met your goal, you still met your objective, and there was some brilliance in there as well as a mistake, then that's fine. They want to ask you, what's the biggest mistake you made? Tell them about a real mistake that hurt. It's like, hey, I did this, screwed up, and it wasn't me at my best. Here's what I did to fix it. And the result was it ended up working out, and tell them why it ended up working out. So be specific, so it doesn't sound wishy-washy or like you're making it up. All right, last point I think is down here. John is a factory certified armorer for all these weapons. Factory certified. So he has secret clearance, and he's factory certified in all these weapon systems. If he's going to work for a gun company, then this is going to be big. And so that should go maybe closer to the top. Maybe highlight it, put it at the very top, maybe drag it and put it at the very top of education. Have a separate section for certifications if you feel that would highlight it better. If you think it would highlight it well, if you know who you're talking to, then put it up here and say, if FN is the if you're going to be working with FN weapons entirely, put the factory certification up here. If you're trying to go to work for someone with a whose weapons are 3 of your 3 factory certifications, put them there. It lets them know that not only are you able to get those factory certifications, in his case, he got them all himself. So he wasn't going through a company that paid for it. He paid for it himself because he just loves it. And so if people know you love it, that's a good thing too. But if it needs to be prominent, if it's really relevant, put it at the top. Find a way. Make a new section. Summary of qualifications. Could have put it up here. Could replace that, right? And then and so All right, so that's pretty much it. I think the main thing is there's not like a hard and fast rule for resume writing. It's about communication. It's about storytelling, and it's about talking to them, finding out what they're asking for, and then telling it back to them, saying what you do, using their words, their lingo. A resume is not about blowing minds. A resume is about seeming solid, filling qualifications, solving their problem. That's what it's about. It's not exciting. It's about solving their problem. Go through, keep it to 3 bullet points. If you need to say more, don't. It's just 3 bullet points. Write better. And then make sure you know the difference between data and story. Story is the only thing they'll remember. It's the only thing they care about. And so summarize, tell them why everything is important, like this. Why was it important that he, did all this stuff? Say why it's important, because an action by itself doesn't matter unless it solves someone's problem. That's what makes it a story. And then finally, just prioritize information based on what they need to hear. All right, cool. Well, I guess I did not even check to find out if anybody is watching me. I just assume nobody's watching me because I just started this. And so, but I hope this has been helpful. And I hope that and there's nothing in the chat, so I think we're good. But I hope that if you have any more questions, keep in mind, I'm involved with a Combat Veterans Brotherhood. It's, in fact, I'm looking at her right now. You can see our poster right back there. And so anyway, check out, if you're interested, check out combatbrotherhood.com, and you can find us on Facebook, and we exist to help veterans get what they need, get the help they need to become leaders. This is just a part of that. All right, guys. Thanks, John, for allowing me to use your resume as an example, and I hope that this helps everybody. I hope you guys ask questions if you need any help. All right. This has been Chris Stadler, and we'll talk to you later.